Hello and welcome to What Are You Saying Ways, where we talk about issues that are in the news and how it affects us all. My name is Mary Ann O'Connor and I'm not alone, never alone. My twin is here, Mercy Ebokbo.
I have been smiling sheepishly while you were, having the intro of the show. I mean, it's good to have you.
Yeah, see, when I say she's my twin, we're twinning. Can you see the colors?
Definitely. Yeah. But, with a little blend of, splash of white.
I know.
Just a compliment to
But
you.
the eyes that see well, one is yellow, one is not.
Okay.
Anyway, welcome to the show. Of course, it's been a very interesting weekend. So many things have happened over the weekend. I think my greatest takeaway from the weekend is the rain that fell from last night into this morning. I just stayed in bed. I didn't want to get out. Then I remembered that I have to be a baby girl, so I had to stand up, go and carry my weight, because I have to be part of the shredded gang. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't you like how I look?
Oh, that kind of stuff.
How was your weekend?
Well, my weekend was quite restful. At some point I felt like my body was, undergoing a lot of stress. So I did, I think from Sunday, I'm not sure I did service. I had to be in bed, just sleeping and resting it away. Yeah, and all of that.
And you feel better?
Yeah, I feel better. I feel great. Plus the rain came, and although I didn't quite feel it as much as I should, it was quite scary for me. I was like, what's going on? Are we about to have the roofs and the houses falling?
I enjoyed it.
But then I think that the
it.
weather is just, a little bit chilled.
Yeah.
And we should have this for like 3 days. Maybe the earth would be very cold and chilled.
Well, so I think that these, pocket of rains are, heralding the rainy season. He's giving you a tip of what's going to happen.
I think, because the sun is too much.
Do you want to tell me?
Oh, no.
I mean, but I can't wait to start wearing my turtlenecks and all, because I think those clothes in my wardrobe just look at me like, Auntie, why yo?
Until you leave the shores of the country then.
Anyway, here's what today's quote is. Transparency, accountability, and the rule of law are not merely technical questions. They are moral questions about how we use power. And that's from one of my favorite persons, Kofi Annan, his former head of the African Union. And of course, it's very beautiful when you see quotes like this from amazing world leaders. And for me, a transparency, accountability, and the rule of law should be more like the bread and butter of leaders across the world. Literally, you should eat, sleep, breathe that. But of course, no one's perfect, not even the poster child for democracy, the United States of America. But then, of course, you see, if you've lived there, you'd understand that there's some bit of responsibility in terms of the rule of law. You can see some sort of responsibility when it comes to accountability. You don't feel chop government money anyhow for that. No, but it's true. And there's some level of transparency. People don't run for offices there because they want to eat their share of the national cake or benefit their, members of their family, as we see in this part of the world. So, I mean, I think that maybe there's something we can borrow a lift from. Yeah,
definitely. But when you also look at that particular phrase, it raises a lot of questions. I think that particular, quote has a lot of, conversation, especially amongst the legal practitioners. And you hear people say, is morality law? Because, the principle, moral principles and legal principles are always not the same. Just because something is morally right or wrong does not mean that it's legally, right or wrong. And so this has always been the issue, because we've seen several cases in Nigeria where you begin to ask, let's not forget that the Constitution is still going through a reform, and over time we keep complaining about the Constitution. It is not we the people, because we the people were actually not present. We need to have our Constitution.
We're not consulted.
We're not consulted and all of that. But then again, there's been a lot of call for our Constitution to be reviewed over time. For every other time we find the errors and the lacunas in our Constitution. And so we've had cases in Nigeria where you see issues where you begin to ask yourself, there are no laws, but you ask yourself, so where is the morality in all of this? Oh, but this is not right. This should not be the case. And then they say again, where are the laws that back, this particular concern? So, I mean, it's a very serious issue. Morality is great, but then again, morality is not law, and that would always be the, the conversation or the argument.
Well, tonight we delve into the crucial issue of accountability, and that's why we had that opener, in governance. And today we're spotlighting the recent lawsuit filed by the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, against several former governors, including the Minister of the FCT, Wike. Now, this legal action underscores the ongoing struggle to hold public officials accountable for their stewardship of public funds, particularly concerning loans acquired during their tenures. Tonight on Ways, we delve into the heart of this controversy with our expert guest, Oluwadare Kolawole, who is the Deputy Director for SERAP. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back. You're still watching Ways, and my name is Mary Anna Con. Let's look at some interesting story about today. Yes, International Day for, well, today actually is International No Diet Day. In other words, those of us that have been doing fit farm, who are no fit farm for today. Well, I cheated a little bit because I had a little bit of chicken pie, darling, in the middle. I cheated. But International No Diet Day, celebrated on May 6th, and promotes body positivity and self-acceptance while raising awareness about the potential dangers and inefficacy of dieting culture. It encourages people to embrace their bodies as they are, really. So love yourself. And also it helps us to focus on health habits rather than restrictive diets. The day also advocates for acceptance of diverse body shapes and sizes, challenging societal norms and, those norms that equate thinness with beauty and worth. It is an opportunity for individuals like you and me to celebrate themselves and others just as they are, promoting a more inclusive and compassionate approach to health and well-being. And I totally agree, because ever since I was a little girl, I've always been obsessed with my body. I've always been obsessed with my body. And so I've never wanted to be fat. I just wanted to be thin. I still don't think that I want to be fat. I just don't. As much as I admire when people are thick and round, it's beautiful. I like it because I'm from a family of women who are thick and round and beautiful, gorgeous women. But I've always been so, I know. And this day is for me because growing up, my mom used to really just nag me for not eating. I almost want to say it's ineffective. So
outside of this country, you would be treated as a mental health. Yeah,
and I had a special dish at home, a special plate where my food will fit in. If it's too much, I'm not eating. But I mean, maybe we need to start loving ourselves. And I think the older you get, you begin to appreciate your body and just love it.
So maybe I start from the point where we say, let's begin to love our bodies, let's love ourselves the way we are. I don't know if this memo is very late because, a lot's been going on, in the world of women.
We get carried away by,
and what have you. But, in terms of diet, weight, and what have you, sometimes it's necessarily not about the diet. In my own case, you find out that sometimes it's not about what you eat. There are some of us that we don't literally need to eat.
You just breathe air.
They were all plumbed up. That's all. Because I have friends who are very thin, if you want to use the word thin. I mean, not in a derogatory way, but we're just saying they are not on the other side of the divide. They consume a lot. They eat all sorts of.
I used to be
and
that
then you
girl.
see,
I used to be that girl.
I mean, I'm like, why are you guys so mean and wicked? So most you could also look at genetic issues as well.
Yeah.
So, and then when it comes with age again, the older you get, I realize that,
there's something called middle-aged spread.
Yeah, you can't deal with it. But most importantly, I think that we pay attention to, our body, just the same way we pay attention to every other thing, spirit, soul, and body. Pay attention to your body, what you eat, how you behave. You get to a certain age. I mean, what we used to do literally when we're in our, teen age is not longer what you'll be doing when you get to a certain age and all of that. So, yes, it's beautiful. Love your body. I hope everybody gets to love your body.
And don't overdo the diets, because a lot of people overdo dieting and then, they start developing issues, because eating disorders, etc. In fact, the latest thing is Ozempic. Please, as much as I'd like to see what an Ozempic looks like, it's killing a lot of people. It's good. It's helping people lose weight, but, it's also making people look really sickly. So Don't overdo it. Love your body. Yes, you don't want to pack on weight like me. Go to the gym, watch what you eat, but don't starve yourself. Don't overdo it. Today, no dieting. We're all cheating.
I
Can we
think I
go
should
get
say,
ice cream after the show? It might be too late. We might not be able to get ice cream.
we can get something else.
Yeah, but I already cheated. Anyway, you're still watching Ways, and we have been looking at today's International Day for No Diet. So no dieting. If you're listening and watching us today, give yourself a break. Give yourself a pat on the back. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the socio-economic we'll talk about Sarah, by the way, and the fact that they filed a suit against several governors, former governors, across the country. And of course, we'll be having the Sarah Deputy Director join us to have this conversation. But first, let's find out what we found in the news.
Well, what I found in the news today, if you actually follow the news, you would see that there's a certain trend. It's called 80% of Lekki building have no approval. That's the caption. And, you know, of course, you look at some of the headlines. Lagos State Commissioner for Physical Planning and Urban Development, Dr. Oluyinka Olumide, mentioned that a whopping 80% of buildings in Ibeju Lekki aspect, I mean, if you live in Lagos, you definitely know the area I'm talking about. Is actually on the island. It's a developing part. But of course, when you talk about Lekki, everybody literally thinks it's Lekki, as it were, phase one, scheme one, and all of that. But, you know, I'm not going to go into the details of all of that, like quote him verbatim, paraphrase, but you need to get the point that what was said in the statement is that, you know, 80% of Lekki building have no approval. Now, my big question here, because, I mean, I've been thinking about it since I saw this, it's generated a lot of conversation, especially in the you know, the real estate sector, and people are talking. So the buzz is actually very high. My question is it even possible to erect a building without getting the necessary approval from, you know, the necessary authority or the authorities? Is it even possible for that to happen? Because I know that before, I'm not, you know, a structural engineer, I'm not an engineer, but there are some things that are very basic. Yeah. That, you know, you literally don't need any Harvard. You don't need to go to Harvard to understand all of this. It's not rocket science, like I always say. But, you know, common knowledge, simple is that. Before you erect a structure in Lagos State, you will need to obtain, you know, necessary permits and approval from the Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority, the Lagos State Physical Planning Permit Authority. And you would also, when that happens, they will also have to review the building plans and ensure that they comply with the building regulations and zoning laws, you know. Now, this, because there are procedures, you also need to submit an environmental impact assessment depending on, you know, if it's important, depending on the structure, wherever it is that you've gotten land, if it's important. For instance, you know the ongoing demolition that's going on, the landmark, what have you. So you hear the conversation around the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment Report. That is, if it's required.
It's yet to be made public. We've not seen it yet.
I'm just mentioning that. But these are the procedures. So you just don't wake up, because there are procedures, there are patterns, I mean, there are structures, and that's why you have government. Because if you leave the people without governance, then there's going to be chaos. So I am really taken aback. Now, apart from the, you know, this other procedure, additionally, you would also have to comply with other regulations, such as, you know, obtaining a building permit, adhering to, you know, setback requirements and other safety guidelines. So the process, this is not entirely all, it's not encompassing. I'm just mentioning that there are procedures. I'm saying that there are procedures. So it's, for me, I'm trying to understand that if you wake up and make a statement that some buildings, 80% of it, don't have the approval, what are you even saying? Are you saying that, you know, you have been, as a government, have just been sitting and folding your arms while people begin to erect illegal structures across the entire state, up to 80%. How did you even arrive at, you know, the data? What statistics, what survey, what research did you do? And if you say that, you know, 80% of these structures are illegal, then you need to fire yourself and fire every other person. Resign, just move away. It is serious. Now, for every statement that we make, I'm just going to just make this point and then hand that over to you. There's consequence. I'm afraid the sector, and I know what this means. I know the conversations that those who are in diaspora, Nigerians, their fears, their concern about investing in properties. And so this particular statement alone has gone a long way it's going to have a serious impact in the real estate sector, you know, across, not just in Lagos, but across the entire country. It's not really, you know, a good, you know, statement to make. You know, you say 60%. Like I said again, 80%. Where's the data? How did you arrive at that?
Well, so Wahab Shita has a lot of questions to answer. I'd love to have the Lagos Environment Minister. He's doing a great job, and there's a video actually of him explaining himself as to, you know, why some of these demolitions are happening. There are too many things to it. First and foremost, who allowed these buildings to get to lintel stage? And some negotiations will tell you that it's very difficult. It's very difficult to obtain a certificate of occupancy because it's very difficult. Most state governors don't sign them. And then somebody asks you, where are your documents for this building? Who gave you the go-ahead to start building? They have no answers. So the blame needs to be shared between the government and the people. And I think that Nigerians, as Nigerians too, we're not very lawful people. Because if you don't have, for example, I mean, if you have not been certified to be a doctor, why go cut someone open? That's what we're doing. So I think the government and the people need to share the blame. But let's go into what I found in the news. So Northern Elders and the New Nigerian People's Party have cautioned Mr. President against any military pact with France and the United States. Now, there's been stories in the news all through the weekend about the United States and France trying to lure Nigeria into allowing them to situate their military bases here in the country. And the NMPP, in fact, had told Mr. President to tread with maximum caution over the alleged signing of defense pacts with French and the United States government. In fact, they said that it would be a disastrous thing to do. And it might have implications for Nigeria's peace. Don't forget that we already are dealing with a loss of insecurity. There are many on the one hand who are saying, oh, if America and France brings their, you know, military bases here, it will help us to end insecurity. But then there are people who will say, well, let's talk about Mali. Let's talk about Senegal. Let's talk about some other countries that they've had their military bases. How did those countries turn out? Why Nigeria? Why now? And of course, the other question is, does the average Nigerian want another country to come and, you know, put its military base on another sovereign country's soil? Why? What's the essence? Boots on the ground. It's not supposed to be. Because again, Nigeria's foreign policy is that of non-alignment. But of course, the politicians, the geopoliticians will tell you that because of what's happened in Francophone countries with the ousting of the United States, Britain, and France, they're coming to the closest persons to them that can, you know, has the best relations with them now, which is Nigeria. But then every other African country is saying, what did you do in those countries that made them send you out? Are you going to do the same thing in Nigeria? But there's a rebuttal from the federal government as at this evening. And of course, it's coming from the federal government saying that they have not in any way signed any pact whatsoever with the US and France. But there are so many reports of certain trainings happening in the Gulf of Guinea.
You know what, that also brings us back to the conversation of accountability and transparency, because over time we have seen government will come out. I mean, government has a business of always saying, hey, we're not doing that, that's not what we're doing, or that's not true. They would always want to debunk the story, but really, are you really doing what, you know, is being said? So it's another thing to say, okay, we're not signing any pact, but what exactly are you doing at the end of the day? I understand, you know, that if the U.S. is saying, oh, we want to have a presence, it wouldn't be the first time the U.S. is having presence, especially, you know, in...
They've asked us before under the Obasanjo administration, and we said no.
They have presence, not just in Africa. They've also had presence in other, you know, European countries. And usually the conversation is about, you know, protecting global peace and prosperity and what have you. But we need to understand that, you know, when nation states come together, it's the international politics that happens. Because at the end of the day, politics is simple interest. When people come together, when the US come together, Australia, Germany, France, Nigeria, they come together, they say, we're coming together for national peace and prosperity and development, but at the end of the day, it's for home interest. Everyone is
Exactly.
there to represent their home interest, and that's what it is. So the
So
question is,
what?
for
So
every
what's the
time,
interest of the U.S. and
that's
France in
exactly what we
Nigeria?
don't know, but there are a lot of speculations, about maybe it could also be about our natural resources and what have you. It could also
Well,
be,
we've had this conversation about our natural
no, but
resources,
as time goes
and the
on,
major culprits that have been pointed to, whether it be in the DRC or wherever, is the U.S. and the UK and France. So again, this is why many people are being skeptical as to them bringing their boots
and
to
that's
the
the
ground.
thing, so some people, because right now the argument is on both sides. You have some people who are saying this would actually mean good for us. First of all, you're looking at the economic positives, the plus that will come. And when you now have these persons being paid in dollars, they will literally have to change to
We
your
already
naira and all of
come
that.
on. We
But
already
that's a
have
lot.
we,
But
we already
is that
have
what
trade relations with these
is that the
guys.
kind of conversation? Are these the things that we should consider? But
Look.
this is the point that I was trying to make before we actually move, because I know we're out of time. Is that for every time you find the US themselves know that for every time you find themselves, putting their nose or trying to interfere in anything, they have an interest. So the big question is,
And
what
that's
exactly
detail
is
for
the
every other
interest,
country. I
for
mean,
Nigeria?
whatever case that they're trying to make, Nigerians are not buying it. But the federal government has come out to say we are not considering any foreign military base. So that's that for now. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be having Kolawole Oluwadare join us live in the studio to talk about accountability and, of course, the suits that they recently filed against some former governors across the country. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Ways. Let's delve into the conversation of accountability and responsibility on the part of our governors. The lawsuit filed by the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, against several former governors, including the Minister of the Federal Capital, Abuja, Nyesom Wike, marks a pivotal movement or moment in the quest for accountability in governance. At its core, this legal action seeks to scrutinize the handling of public funds, particularly concerning loans obtained during official tenures. SERAP's bold move underscores the imperative of transparency and integrity in public service, challenging the status quo and demanding answers to questions of financial stewardship. And today's topic is analyzing Wike ex-governor's lawsuit on over 5.9 trillion naira and $4.6 billion loan. Joining me via telephone is Kolawole Oluwadare. He is the Deputy Director for SERAP. But please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember that you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or a WhatsApp message on 081 803 84663. That's 081 803 84663. Now, here are the facts of the lawsuit so that you can understand the conversation. SERAP sued the 36 governors and the FCT minister over their failure to account for 5.9 trillion naira and $4.6 billion loans obtained by the estates and the FCT, and to publish copies of the loan agreement, including details on locations of projects executed with the loans. In the suits numbered FHC ABJ CS 592-2024, filed last Friday at the Federal Court, High Court in Abuja, SERAP is asking the court to direct and compel governors and Mr. Wike to account for the 5.9 trillion naira, I beg your pardon, and the $4.6 billion loans obtained by the states and the FCT, and publish copies of the loan agreements and locations of the project. So joining us this evening is Kolawole Oluwadare via telephone. He's a good governance advocate, a human rights lawyer. He has a passion for social action and public interest litigation, and he's been involved in this for more than a decade. He's a deputy director at SERAP, where he oversees advocacy and litigation programs. Mr. Oluwadare, it's so good to have you join us. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. I know that SERAP has been, up and doing when it comes to these suits and, taking governments to court and asking for accountability. You've been doing it very well for so many years. And here we are again. This time, obviously, something that concerns every state, and one would wonder, has there been any response whatsoever? Because I've seen you on your social media over and over again asking these governors, these former governors, to account for these monies. Has there been any response by any state governor so far?
No, thank you very much. There has been no response to the freedom of information request that SERAP had sent out, which is why these have become another subject of public interest litigation before the Federal High Court. None of the 30 states responded to the freedom of information request.
Interestingly, many people would say that taking them to court would probably twist their arm. But what do you hope to get out of this suit that has been filed, at the High Court? And most importantly, has SERAP gone around the different states of the Federation, including the FCT, to see if any of the things that the governments at the time promised to do with these loans have been done?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'll take the first part of the question first, as to what we hope to achieve by this, or with the issue. And I'll say that it's rather unfortunate, and I think it's a sign of backed governance, or call it back faith, on the part of these governors not to have responded to this freedom of information request. What SERAP is asking for is basically information. Basically, copies of the loan agreement that have given rise to the debt profile of each of the states, and the proof that those funds were spent in interest of the public. Of course, you want to believe that these monies did not end up in private pockets. So the aim is to compel the states. By compel, I mean for the courts to compel these governors, who of course naturally are statutorily accountable to the people of the state, to provide this information to SERAP. This is in tandem with the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act that allows an applicant to go to court to compel a public institution to provide information if the public institution falls in doing so. And as for the second part of the question, as to whether we've gone round the same court, we've not done it. And that is not the aim of this, of the Freedom of Information request or the suit. This does not in any way suggest that funds were embezzled. I would leave that to Nigerians or perhaps the anti-corruption agency. This is simply a request for information. And it's against the background of the information that we have. So, for instance, the Debt Management Office, which is the body statutorily empowered, among other things, to, of course, be the warehouse big data on the loans that Nigeria are taking, which includes, of course, subnationals like the state, have published details of the debt profile of Nigeria from the federal government and from the consequent states. The data is there. If the Debt Management Office has done that in keeping with the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, it's commonsensical, and also in line with the Freedom of Information Act, that the state governments also publish Details of the loans, and don't forget, these loans were taken at various times by the state government, and now those loans have been expended. So it is not for us to go to these states to find out how those loans have been spent. It is for the state government to account for having funds that been spent. And if perhaps some people have said that some of the sitting governors now did not take up those loans, but that is beside the point. Governors is a continuum. There are records that will show how the loans have been obtained till now has been spent. Right. It is really worrisome that Nigeria will owe so much, this state will owe so much, and no one is ready to give account for how those funds have been spent.
All right, so Kolawole Oluwadare, I'd like you to speak to the laws. If we do have laws that demand accountability of these governors in terms of expenditure and revenue.
Mr. Oluwadare, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'd ask my question again. I'm asking that, do we have laws that demand accountability of our governors in terms of, expenditure, what they, what they expend in their state, and, the revenues that they generate? Kolawole, can you hear us, please?
Yes, I can.
But did you hear her question?
Yes, I got the question.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm waiting for you.
Okay. That was a bit of a glitch, but I heard what you said. The laws that we have, law not perfect, like every other democracy in the world, is not the problem. And I'm prefacing my answer with that. The challenge over the years, particularly since 1999 in the Fourth Republic, has been the willingness, call it political will, perhaps, of public officers, whether appointed or elected, to obey the laws that we have. And that itself defeats the purpose of the rule of law and further defeats democracy. We have various laws that compel transparency and accountability. There are many of them. For instance, the asset declaration mechanism in the Constitution is meant to bring forth accountability. But let's go to the freedom of expression provisions in the Constitution, Section 39, for instance, which is the ground-up, provides that every citizen has that liberty to express him or herself. And that expression is a two-way thing. It means they can speak, that they share their opinions, and they can receive opinions, which is the foundation for the Freedom of Information Act that compels public institutions, including governors and the office of the governor, to provide information to the citizens proactively. And then secondly, upon request. Now let's go to budgetary allocation. The budgetary processes in every state is almost like what obtains at the federal level. The budget is made up of submission by the various ministries, departments, and agencies. They get eventually presented to the National Assembly, in this instance, to the State of Assembly by the governor. Then they become the appropriation bill. And this budget is supposed to be public. So it means citizens can follow line by line. They can follow what is capital expenditure. They can follow what is capital expenditure. There is also the Public Procurement Act that governs how everything is to be bought or procured. So there are various laws along each of these levels to ensure that government is accountable. Which is why, for instance, if you go to the website of the Accountant General of the Federation as I speak, you will see details of the latest SPAC allocation. In this instance, it should be that of February or March, which means it will show clearly what every state got from federal allocation and what should go to each local government. It is clear. That is part of freedom of information, and that's part of the accountability process. But it is not enough for us to know what the state governor has gotten, what the local government has gotten. That is good. Now it is the turn of the subnational, the state and local government now, to tell us how the funds have been spent. They should explain to Nigeria. We also have the processes of the Auditor General of the Federation, and which also is replicated across the states. The Auditor General of the State, who also audits state agencies to show what has gone in, what has gone out, paper trails that shows that these funds are spent for public purposes. Again, the report is published annually. It shows where there are anomalies, and a lot of them are bound in the public space as well. You can get that from the website of the General of the Federation. So it is not because we don't have laws. It is not because the legal framework is not perfect. It is just the unwillingness of public institutions to obey the law, really. That is the problem. That is what we face.
Okay, I want to still take you back to, the question that my colleague Marianne had asked earlier. What's the end game? Some people say that, syrup is just always, creating awareness. Is this another awareness? What's the end game?
And I would understand that. That perhaps is coming from some sort of angst by the people of Nigeria who has they've done this for too long, and perhaps they ask these questions legitimately out of frustration. But as law-abiding citizens, we can only submit to the principles of the rule of law for any grievances that we have, which is why Section 6 of the Constitution is very instructive. There are three arms of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. By Section 6 of the Constitution, judiciary is given that power for every citizen, including even arms and tiers of government, to submit their grievances to the court. For ultimately, the court determines the rights, duties, and liabilities and obligations of each of the parties, which is why you see even the state governments go to court against the federal government, simply because any other thing apart from the rule of law process submitted to the judiciary, of course, will be self-help, and that's anarchy. And nobody wants that. Okay. So we go to court because as law-abiding citizens, we are following the laws that says that if there are issues, submit them to the court. And we're also aware, as a legal advocacy organization, of the challenges that the judiciary faces. We know the slow pace of justice. We are aware, but we believe in the judicial process. And just to buttress that fact, we've had judgments in our favor in the past, where the court availed in favor of the Nigerian people against the government, even though most of the judgments are yet to be obeyed. So we are only doing what we should do as private citizens, with the hope that the citizens ultimately will take this up on this side, as it were, and make sure that this advocacy resounds to those in public office, whether they be in the legislature, those that are appointed to be in the National Assembly or State House Assembly, to the President itself, and even to the heads of the courts in Nigeria who are appointed to serve the people.
All right, Mr. Oluwadare, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about precedents, because, of course, if we're looking at these issues, we need to see if governors have been adhering before now and why we expect for them to continuously adhere. But we'll be right back. We're talking with Serap on the issue of a suit that has been filed against governors across the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT, of monies that they have not been accountable for. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. This is still Ways, and we are still analyzing governor's lawsuit. The lawsuit by Serap against governors over 5.9 trillion naira and 4.6 billion loans. And my guest is Kolawole Oluwadare. He's the deputy director of Serap, and we've been talking about this suit and of course the concerns of the average Nigerian, which is Serap is always taking these people to court. They're always charging people to court. They're always, filing lawsuits. When are we going to get these leaders to deal with the problem? So, Mr. Oluwadare, I want to ask you the question that everyone's been asking. Has there been any precedence whatsoever where these governors were accountable? And you mentioned something about the DMO, making public these, figures and information. In your suit, are you going to join the DMO in that suit? Or you're just literally just taking the state governors to court? Again, how certain are you that Nigerian state governors, past or present, will do what the law says in this regard?
Thank you very much, Mary. we are very certain that the court to which we've submitted to will do right by the Nigerian people. As to whether these governors will do what the law said they should do, they have not done that within the 7-day period that the Freedom of Information compels them to do that. And so the matter is before the court. But we've had instances where even when the matter is in court, public institutions and public officers have come forward with information that we've asked for. So it's still possible that they will provide that information even during the judicial process. And that is very possible. But if they don't, we believe that the court will do the right thing. Again, it's very simple. How simple it's worrisome. Why can't they provide information as to how these funds have been spent? And as to whether the truth includes the debt management office, no. The debt management office, as it were, as it stands, has done what it should do. And I'm really enjoying all Nigerians to go to the website, part of this advocacy for enlightenment and public education, to go to the website of the Debt Management Office to access this public. There are public documents there for anyone to see, which contains a breakdown of each of the amounts standing to this against the name of every state as domestic debt and as foreign debt. You will see it there clearly. As at December 31st, 2023, the figures are there for everyone to see. And I know that once everyone sees those figures in their billions of naira and millions in dollars, the natural question is, how were these funds spent? Who collected them? When were they collected? What did they use it for? What were the terms of the loan agreement? It's that same question we're asking the governors in this instance. And so the DMO is not a party to that too. They provided this information. It is for the state governors now. And don't forget, each of these loans were negotiated. Some of them might have been collecting, depending on the agency. Sometimes it's the IMF and the World Bank, sometimes it's the Chinese loans. But some of them were negotiated individually by each of the states. So it means the terms of agreement will be different. And that's why we're asking the state governors to provide them, because they are the beneficiaries. They took part in those engagements and consultations and that led to the agreements and then to the eventual disbursement of the loans. So we really believe that the court will do justice in this system. So ultimately.
Quickly, before my colleague asks you another question, you've talked about the fact that these states have negotiated differently. Is SERAP also going to take it upon themselves, not just on national TV and on the radio, but will you be sensitizing people in this state, across the states? I don't know if there's SERAP in every state across the federation, because again, people cannot go after what they don't know. Yes, you've said a few people can go to the DMO site to see this information, but many people do not know. So why would they want to press for accountability if they don't even have any idea that these monies have been taken and these monies were promised or were going to be used to do anything? Secondly, sometime last year, if I'm not mistaken, around this time, Justice Emeka Nwite of the Federal High Court in Abuja ordered the Buhari administration to account for $460 million Chinese loan to fund the failed Abuja CCTV project to publish names of Chinese and local contractors who collected money. So far, we're yet to hear from the Buhari administration. So can we again hold out hope? I'm asking you, not like a broken record, that anything will come out of this, being also that you're an officer of the law, you obviously work with the court, and Nigerians at some point have lost, trust in the judicial system. So is there any hope whatsoever or any thread or shred of it that people can hold on to?
Thank you very much, Marian. I'll take the last part of your question. I can understand the cynicism that would prevail in the minds of people, particularly those who may not be used to the judicial process, about the slow pace of justice and perhaps some of the judgments that have come out of the courts in recent times. But SERAP is a legal advocacy organization. Now I'm a lawyer by profession. I understand what it means not to have a judiciary, no matter how challenging it may appear. The alternative to the rule of law is anarchy. And I can assure you, anarchy is what no one wants. And that is why, as part of conversations like these, we also need to build the confidence of the people in the judicial process. Self-help has never helped, will never help anyone, which is also part of the advocacy to government agencies to understand that disobeying the rule of law, the judgments in court, and the judicial process ultimately does, it's an ill wind. It blows no one no good. And that is why we would go to court knowing that that is where the solution, as it were, lies. We really have no alternative. We need to continue the advocacy conversation. Which is why, again, we're having this conversation. Even though the matter is in court, it is not subjudice in any way, by the way. We're having a conversation not about the merits of the case, but informing the people of Nigeria what are the facts and figures and the legal basis behind this, of course, linked to good governance advocacy as well. And as to the first part of your question about educating the people, this is part of that, which is why I'm very grateful for this opportunity that's been offered by your organization, this platform, to educate the people to have conversations around real issues, devoid of the petty sentiments of tribe politics and religion, which appears to mar the whole good governance conversation, so that we educate people that access to information is not a gift. It's not government doing us a favor. It is a right of the people. Meanwhile, these governors, including the president himself and public officials, go around the states and local governments campaigning, seeking for votes when it's election time, making different promises, providing details of information. But when it comes to providing information when they are in power about good governance, they are not willing. So why do we have a Minister of Information? Why do we have a Commissioner of Information? Is it not to ensure, among other things, that information is available to people? Participation in governance does not start and end at the post every 4 years. People must participate, and they must be informed to participate. They must know. They need to know. So we need to keep educating the people, and hopefully conversations like this will dovetail even to the rural areas, to those who might not be connected to the internet, so that they know. They know, for instance, how much their things have collected and how much stands to their name in those. For instance, curiously, if you will permit me, if you go to the Debt Management Office website, you will see, for instance, Abia State, as at 31st September 2023, local debt is 138 billion naira. And go down the line to Bauchi, you see Bauchi is 160 billion naira. That is just domestic debt. And the state is the least in this. Delta has 377 billion to its name. In domestic debt, we're not talking of foreign debt. And so, we just need to continue conversations like this to educate the people so that they know and they can take part in the governance process.
Okay. So in other words, we're not looking at having broader reforms. We're also not looking at having more laws. We just need to continue the conversation and get the people to participate.
Yes, we cannot do that.
All right, then. A quick one. What role, then, do you think that the judiciary can play in ensuring, fair and very speedy resolution of cases that's related to government officials in terms of accountability? Because I remember in the course of having this conversation, you made mention of the fact that the judiciary, one of the challenges is that, the process is actually slow. So what's the role of the judiciary in ensuring accountability and transparency?
Thank you. So I would look at that from the institutional perspective and then from the personal perspective. From the institutional perspective, I'm talking about that of the judiciary as an institution. And then the personal perspective deal with perhaps the powers, liability, obligations of each judicial officer, in this case, the judges. So for the judiciary as a whole, it is understanding the role they play. So when people say the cliche that judiciary is the last of all common man, it has a deeper meaning in democracy. It means the common man can look up to the court even when all systems are failed. And I think the judiciary as an institution needs to understand that. But again, we must know that they get brought about by years of misrule, which unfortunately also affects judiciary in terms of funding infrastructure. You would have to be in court to see that even the court itself doesn't have it to do the business of dispensing justice, and even the analog way of doing things that slows down the administration of justice, whether in criminal or in civil cases. And then, to the other aspect, which I think is much more important, that of the individual judicial officers, the judges. They also need to understand the role they play in society. Apart from donning a wig and gown and dispensing justice, as it were, they are also members of society. For instance, we are all queuing for fuel now. Whether you are rich or poor, you would have to leave your jeep at one point to carry jerrycan if this thing persists. And also look at the increment in the electricity tariff. It affects everyone. Perhaps it's proportionate to the poor, but it affects everyone. And so it means that judicial officers need to know, and that applies to everyone in Nigeria, that without good governance, everyone is going to feel the pinch. We cannot isolate or insulate ourselves from the effect of bad governance. Really, it's going to affect everyone ultimately across all sectors: education, health, security, and more. If that is understood by the judiciary, perhaps it creates a mindset that allows them to do their job, also understanding the challenges that they face.
Well, don't forget, if you're watching us, you can be part of the conversation by sending us an SMS. You can also call us. Our phone lines are open, 0702-500-7749. That's 0702-500-7749. I'll take it one more time, 0702-500-7749. Or you can send us a message on WhatsApp, 081-803-84663. We're talking about accountability and good governance, transparency most importantly. And from all that we've heard, we need to be part of the conversation for it to be loud enough for these governors to hear. Mr. Luadare, finally, before I let Mercy ask you her last question, how easy will it be to get the average Nigerian who today is barely trying to survive, to eat, to be able to transport themselves from point A to B, that's been distracted by the tariff hike in electricity and also the hike in the price of petrol, who's barely making it through their day, to be concerned about these monies that governors have yet to be accountable for?
I think we can look at it from two perspectives: attitudinal change and behavioral change. I believe that attitudinal change perhaps will be maybe some sort of low-hanging fruit, which will also maybe lead to behavioral change. And that is why conversations like this are important. Of course, it doesn't happen in a day. It has to be long-term. Mm-hmm. Educating the people, letting them know the benefits of good governance, letting them know that some of them are on fuel queues as I speak, some of them are in public transport, in traffic, some of them are trying to still make it home, going through different hardships in their day. They need to link it to good governance, to know that good governance either helps, governance, whether it's good or bad, either helps or destroys things. They need to understand it. So that informs a change in attitude, and then that informs the behavior ultimately. And I think the three issues that I mentioned earlier that has done a lot of damage to our psyche and various conversations around good governance is tribe, politics, and religion. That has found a way to consistently divide Nigerians, more than the hardships you mentioned, Marianne. Those three things they've whittled down the effect of good governance conversations. Because it would mean, for instance, if Sarah was to issue a freedom of information request or advocacy initiative against the governor, some people of his tribe or state or religious extraction may think it's an attack against them. And that whittles down the effect of good. So people need to understand first. When they understand, attitudes will change, and then behaviors will change subsequently. People need to understand that the benefit of good governance, advocacy for good governance, is different from politics, it's different from the old religious outfit today, and probably talking about ethnicity and all that.
Okay. So this is just a quick one. What exactly would be the implication of this particular case or suit, as it were, if the government or those involved do not respond positively?
It would mean that they should. I can say that they missed their chance at the first time, but they always have a second or third chance. They missed the 7-day window within which a public institution is meant to respond to a freedom of information request, which has given Sarah the right to go to court, and then the matter is in court. But of course, they still have time to come to court, either even to publish. And don't forget, really, Sarah's request is not to furnish Sarah with this information, but for them to publish it to the Nigerian public. And so they can always still do that. If they do that, of course, it means that for anyone that does that, it means the court of action expires against such a party. Then it means they have no case to answer in court, as it were.
But in the case where they don't publish anything, what's the implication, for accountability, governance, and the fight against corruption?
The case was gone. They would have their day in court. The court will give judgment, which we expect them to abide with. But the implication for good governance, transparency, and accountability will be negative. It will mean that these government officials would have to try more to win the trust of the people. To me, I think this is a very good platform for them to to win the trust of people that they are accountable. Again, the question is simple. How have spent these loans? Isn't that a good? And they buy slots and hours, including pages of newspapers, to publish what they've done. Isn't this a good way for them to publish what they've done to the Nigerian people? Really, I think it would be, it is already at a stand. Low to their personal positions on transparency and accountability. And I think it's not benefiting democracy or they themselves individually as well.
Well, I guess the ball is in the court of the governors, and we're hoping, with fingers crossed. We can't also determine what, the case would be at the end of the day. This is us hoping that they do the right thing, not necessarily just because SERAP is in the business of getting them to be accountable, but doing it because they want to really be accountable to their people. Kolawole Oluwadare is the Deputy Director of SERAP, and he's been talking to us about accountability and transparency. Thank you so much, Mr. Oluwadare, for coming on the show, and great job that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Well, before we go, do ensure that you follow us on Instagram at Way Show Africa and Official Upgrade TV. Don't forget you can interact with us further by dropping a comment. And most importantly, follow our social media engagements. And remember to like, share, and comment on all our posts on social media. Invite your friends and family to watch our live shows in the morning and in the evening, and you will not regret it. But before we go, if you missed today's quote, here it goes again. Transparency, accountability, and the rule of law are not merely technical questions. They are moral questions about how we use power. And this is a quote by Kofi Annan. I want to say thank you. It's been a great conversation, Mercy. Sometimes it makes me really weak when we keep talking about the same thing every single year. Time and time again.
We keep going in circles.
I know. It's so painful because these people ask us for our votes and they say they want to lead us, they want to govern us, they want to bring good governance to us, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's so difficult to get them to be accountable and stay accountable to us. But let's hope that one day this will be a thing of the past.
Yes, and that's why we're having this conversation. And part of the entire process is that, like you heard him say, talk about this issue. He talked about the need for us to participate. And there's no way you're going to participate if you do not know what exactly is going on in the space. So yes, get involved. It goes beyond just casting your vote. Get involved, know what's going on in your local government, who is the chairman, the governor. Follow the entire process and ask questions. That's the only way we're going to get the desired result that we want.
Yes, and the suffering will end if we all get
Eventually.
involved. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we have a great conversation here on Ways. My name is Mary Anna Cole.
And I am Mercy Eboko. Do have a good night. Rest.